Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted that number 1 would be F1, number 2 would be M3GAN 2.0, number 3 would be How to Train Your Dragon, number 4, 28 Years Later, and number 5, Elio. And I was really off the mark here with my predictions this weekend. I only got 1 out of 5 correct, and I checked the comments as well. I think the biggest thing was that nobody expected a certain movie to get to number 4, to open a little lower. It was not our number 1 choice, obviously. Number 1 was, of course, F1, doing pretty well for itself so far. Now, I've heard some, different things as far as like the budget. I think more official sources have said 200 million because initially it was like, this is a 300 million movie, but then Joseph Kosinski and I think Jerry Bruckheimer too were like, we've never had it where the speculation has been this off, but I think the official budget is probably at 200 million right now. Either way, it opened to 55 million domestically, not too bad, and then with a combined worldwide total, it had a global debut of 144 million. So on a budget of 200 million, not too shabby. Obviously, this is going to depend on how it continues to hold over, keeping a kind of steady course throughout the rest of the summer at this point. But I feel like this is the kind of movie that's designed to be crowd pleasing, to get people talking about it. And I've seen some people, say that about the movie, like, oh man, I feel so rejuvenated after seeing it. Like, a lot of people have been loving this movie, and I even love this movie. I walked out of it going like, you know what? I was not expecting to love it as much as I did, but that was pretty damn good, and I could feel that kind of energy in the theater too. So I have a sneaking suspicion this could, continue to just make waves throughout the rest of the season. It's just, the alternative to like these bigger budgeted like CGI spectacle ones. This is just pure like, just a pure like, yeah, we got real cars driving around, we filmed at actual F1 events and stuff like that. So this could be the thing that becomes the talk of the summer. And I wouldn't say to the same effect of Maverick. I know it's the same director. I'm not going to say it's going to be the same kind of thing, but it has the potential to have a similar kind of hold. So we'll see how it goes. So far though, this is pretty great. And especially for Apple, you may have forgotten that this is an Apple film. Certainly seems like they did not promote that fact as much, that it's an Apple. I feel like most of the time I just saw the Warner's logo, or that's the only thing I picked up on, or it's just the kind of movie where it's like, yeah, you cannot miss this in the theater. Maybe that was kind of it. They honed in on that kind of marketing specifically, and got people to the theater this weekend. And I hope that, bodes well for its holdover. For Apple, this is 46 million over Fly Me to the Moon's opening, 38 million over Argyle's, 35 million over Napoleon, and 32 million over Killers of the Flower Moon. Safe to say, obviously, this is their biggest debut ever for one of their films that was released in theaters, but it wasn't like a limited release either, because I know Blitz kind of snuck into a couple places, but it wasn't really enough to like make a dent on like the pay, like on the site, on the numbers.com. I think domestically it was just kind of empty, and then worldwide had some numbers, so it was like not even worth bringing in there. I think Coda was in some places in limited release, but as far as like their wide like big screen releases, this is their biggest debut, which is good for them. And then for their domestic runs, it has already outgrossed Fly Me to the Moon by 35 million and Argyle, but just by 10. It is sitting behind Napoleon by 6 million, and then Killers of the Flower Moon is not too far beyond that. And when you jump to the worldwide list, it has outgrossed the same movies, Fly Me to the Moon by 106 million and Argyle by 48, but it is sitting behind Killers of the Flower Moon by 12 million, and then Napoleon is a little ways away. It's going to outgross both of those films, but it is interesting how those two are, the same as far as like they're the ones to beat. And then it's interesting how Napoleon was kind of a bigger hit worldwide at that time. But now F1, of course, obviously is going to make a big dent when it comes to that. So that is really cool. It's good to see them finally get a win, even if it doesn't solve all of their, financial woes when it comes to what they pumped into the movie stuff. And they've been still throwing a lot of stuff at Echo Valley just came out, which is purely just a streaming title. And then Wolves, remember, that's another Brad Pitt one that was supposed to go to theaters. I think a code distribution with Sony, but then that fell apart and it just went straight to streaming, which might have been for the better, because when you watch the movie, it's fine, but it's kind of like if you saw it in the movie theater, you'd probably be a little pissed. It's kind of just an easy breezy kind of low stakes movie that you could just, and you probably should just watch at home. As far as opening weekends for Joseph Kosinski's films, it is 49 million over Only the Brave, 18 million over Oblivion, and 11 million over Tron Legacy, 71 million below Top Gun Maverick, and obviously Top Gun Maverick had the explosive kind of run that it ended up having. So yeah, it was expected that it wouldn't have the same kind of opening as that, and definitely not the same kind of run, but still, second best opening weekend for Joseph Kosinski is not too shabby. And then for domestic runs, it is 37 million over Only the Brave already. It needs 34 million until Oblivion. And then worldwide, it's 120 million over Only the Brave and 143 million away from Oblivion. So good on you, Joseph Kosinski. There was a slight part of me that was worried after, he did Tron Legacy and then he went to Top Gun Maverick, but no one courted him to do the next Tron movie that's coming out, which is weird. And then he did a Netflix original with Chris Hemsworth, Spiderhead, which was kind of bad. There was a part of me that was like, oh, don't tell me this guy, just made one really successful, popular movie, but now he's like relegated to just making like streaming commercial slop. And I guess technically this is tied in with the streaming one, but the fact that it was a co-distribution with Warner Brothers to get into theaters, and it's a big boom in theaters right now, I think that just bodes well for the man. And I think he's talented. I'd like to see him make more films, and I think he's just he's got a great technical mind, so this is just really rewarding to see overall. Yeah, just a really great weekend for this one. Number 2 is How to Train Your Dragon, making 19 million, adding to a domestic total of 200 million. So domestically, it did outgross How to Train Your Dragon 2 by 23 million. It is now 17 million shy of outgrossing the original film, so very close in that department. And then worldwide, close, but not as much. It's now sitting at 454 million, so about 46 million away from $500 million. That's pretty good, but 41 million away from the original film's run. Like I said, closer, it's getting closer, and it's going to outgross it. Yeah, that's just kind of a fact. It's just going to outgross it. But I think the fact that it's taken a little bit longer to get there worldwide, I think that is a little bit interesting, and I'm not quite sure where to pin that, you know what I mean? Especially, Lilo and Stitch did really well recently. I think that's the easiest one to compare for obvious reasons, animated to live action, and Chris Saunders and Dean DeBlois. But I'm still interested. I'm still interested by it, though, even though I can't quite pinpoint exactly what it is. We can speculate like, oh, maybe it's just different kind of kids film that's being adapted, Disney versus DreamWorks scenario, and then just, timing, especially with these other releases. I don't know. And I don't care to speculate. Who cares? It's doing fine is the point, It's already tripled its 150 million initial production budget, so they're rocking and rolling. Number 3 is Elio, which I was wondering, I was like, is this going to have like an Elemental type situation where it continues to hold over well, even if it didn't open great? And it not really. It had like around a 50% drop off, not like 60%, which would have been, I think, the kiss of death. It made 10.7 million, which when you open at 20 million or so last weekend, that's not too bad. But the thing about Elemental was that it opened to like 29 million, and then it had like a 30% drop off, which the distance, it still doesn't look too great when you're like writing it out, but that was critical as far as like it catching on, right? And this one not having that same percentage, that same kind of hold, and losing to How to Train Your Dragon. I think Elemental, it was competing with Spider-Verse at the time, and when it had that second weekend, it was kind of like, oh, well, it nudged ahead of Spider-Verse a bit. It's a newer film, but also, some people are still wanting to see it. And Spider-Verse had been out for a little bit there. The fact that Elio, can't like have a hold that, I guess at this rate, I wouldn't say a hold that overtakes How to Train Your Dragon, but the fact that it's not closer, I think that is a little concerning for the movie's overall longevity. For Pixar, it needs 19 million to get past Onward, since it's at 42 million domestically. Worldwide, it is only bumped up to 56 million. I tried to wait a little bit to see if the site would update to have a higher worldwide total, so if it does that after I record this, I'm sorry. Right now, it's just at 56 million. It did outgross Luca by 5 million, but now it needs 64 million until it gets to Soul. I looked at IMDb's release thing. It had most of its release dates last weekend, but it has a couple other places to open to worldwide that could bump it up, but I wouldn't say enough to say that it looks very promising. Still, I'm not going to write it off just yet. We'll still continue to see. I think, though, as far as like it having an elemental kind of rebound, not necessarily. It doesn't quite look like it, which is unfortunate because it is a sweet, cute movie. Number 4 was M3GAN 2.0. Now, when I was saying last week, and like the reason why I'm not predicting this for number 1 is because F1, F1 this and that, but also maybe it's one of those things where they come back with a sequel, but it doesn't have the same audience. That was kind of like part of my speculation, and it turned out to be true in a pretty big way. Like the fact that it is opening at number 4 and it didn't even open close to what the first movie did. The first movie opened to like 30 million. It was, I believe, the first movie in January in 2023. So it opened pretty big and it kind of caught on. And now we have the sequel only 2 years later, not that long, 2 years and a couple months later, not that long. And it only made 10.2 million for the opening weekend, even if F1 is here, soaking up some other competition. It's not like F1 opened to over 100 million. There was definitely room for horror fans or, just fans of M3GAN to want to come back in. And it just did not happen this weekend. And the budget is estimated to be about 15 to 25 million. They could be fine overall, but this is definitely not a great opening for that. This is still Blumhouse pretty low, all things considered. But damn, this opening weekend is 20 million below the original and it needs 85 million to outgross it. Definitely not going to happen. I know we're just talking about, I don't want to write off Elio just yet. In the case of M3GAN, I think I've seen enough Blumhouse recent releases where they've opened kind of small and just kind of petered out. I think that's kind of the case with this. There's no worldwide totals to bump it up yet, so I guess we'll see where it plays there if it, if that comes out, becomes available information. But yeah, I'm actually a little shocked by it. Because, it got a B+ cinema score, which, pretty good. And I feel like there was enough warning beforehand of like, it's not really a horror movie anymore. They've kind of switched into like this action sci-fi comedy thing. And it seemed like, some people out there, especially if they were fans of the first movie, were fine with that switch up. And I mean, according to CinemaScore, I feel like CinemaScore is a clear indication of like, if they take a big creative swing and it doesn't work, you'll be able to tell. B+ is not bad at all. So I think I'm kind of shocked that it wasn't even close. It's not like it opened to like 25 or something. It's like, a bit of a drop off, but close enough. 10.2, that is insane. It really does make, maybe a part of it was just like M3GAN when it came out. It was January, it was like something new, it was promoted as more of a horror. Maybe that's what it was. Some people out there are like, you know what, they're going in a different direction with it. I don't want to see it. Maybe that's what, or maybe some people just didn't like M3GAN when it first came out and they were like, I don't want to see 2, especially if they're doing something fucking weird like this. It's interesting though. I'm kind of shocked by it. I guess I don't want to rule out maybe it could rebound and have the same elemental effect, but I don't know, man. I don't know. This one kind of bums me out. Number 5 is 28 years later, having an over 60% drop. Man, that really bummed me out. It still seems like they're on a decent track here though with the overall worldwide total, but yeah, I can't lie. I was a little bummed to see that it didn't hold over that well. Maybe in the case of like M3GAN not performing that well, maybe 28 years later has a chance to sneak back up. But I don't know. Competition's about to get stacked this July, man. I don't know. Either way, it's at a domestic total of 50 million for Danny Boyle. It is 11 million over The Beach and 5 million over 28 Days Later. So that also makes it the highest grossing film in the trilogy here. It needs 23 million until it gets to Yesterday. And then worldwide, it is sitting at 103 million. So that's not too bad. When we talked last week, and it was kind of like 60 to 75 million. If the budget is 60 million, they only need 17 million to double that, which is, encouraging, good to see. For Danny Boyle, it is 32 million over Trainspotting and 21 million over 28 Days Later. So highest grossing one in the franchise worldwide as well. Needs 51 million until it gets to Yesterday. So yeah, I mean, it seems like it's still in decent shape, but still, and especially crossing over 100 million, that, that's not too shabby as well, especially in your second weekend. But still, it's like, man, I was not expecting a 60% drop, and it kind of bums me out. Maybe, like I said, I guess I can't rule it out for any of these movies. Like maybe they could rebound or, catch a new wave later on in the midst of all these other like bigger budgeted CGI clusterfucks that are about to happen. Some of them look good. I don't know why I'm phrasing it like that, but still, it's like, Man, that is disappointing, especially because it's so good. Number 6 is Lilo and Stitch, a movie I could give a shit less about. Making $6.9 million, adding to a domestic total of $400 million. They made it domestically. It needs $104 million until it gets to Beauty and the Beast. At this point, worldwide, it is sitting at $924 million, so that is $27 million away from The Jungle Book. No advancements, just the $400 million crossing over point domestically, but who gives a fuck? I don't care. You don't care. You've heard enough about Lilo and Stitch. Let's move on to number 7, which is Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, making $4.1 million, adding to a domestic total of $185 million. It has outgrossed the original film domestically by $5 million and now needs $10 million until Rogue Nation, the first of the Macquarie films. And then worldwide, it is sitting at $561 million. So it has outgrossed MI2 by $12 million and now needs $4 million until Dead Reckoning, part 1. But they removed that part of the title. But that's encouraging, though. Like, domestically, it already outgrossed Dead Reckoning, but then worldwide, it's just a sliver away from doing that. So at the very least, more of a turnout for this one compared to the last one, which people said was, a disappointment. And even though it's not going over too much, like, worldwide, it's just squeaking by. Domestically, it's had some time to, set itself away from Dead Reckoning at this point. So, but my point being, it's not like it's going way over that. Just a little bit, but still, like, just showing, like, no, there's still an audience out there. It's just, it's just hard to compete. As far as the Macquarie films, I think it's interesting how, Dead Reckoning already blazing through at this point. Rogue Nation is the one to beat domestically, but Fallout is kind of like, that's tops, tops for the entire thing, and not just Macquarie, just tops for the entire franchise. So yeah, it's just not gonna get to that point, but it's, finding a little good sweet spot, I guess. Number 8 is Materialists, making $2.9 million, adding to a domestic total of $30 million for A24. It has outgrossed We Live in Time by $6 million, The Witch, Ex Machina, and Warfare by $5 million, and Midsummer, Heretic, and Moonlight by $3 million, and it just squeaked by Baby Girl by $2 million, so it's $5 million away from The Iron Claw. Currently, it is the 8th highest grossing domestic run for A24 ever. Worldwide, it did it. It crossed over to $40 million, so they have doubled their initial production budget of $20 million. For A24's worldwide list, it has outgrossed Warfare by $8 million, Brie Larson's Room by $4 million, Ex Machina by $2 million, and it just squeaked by The Witch by a couple $100,000. The next film it needs to outgross for A24 is Past Lives. It needs $2 million to get there, so currently it is number 17. So making a bit more waves domestically than worldwide. And even though it's about to outgross Past Lives, it's kind of like the opposite, how like Past Lives made more waves worldwide, but domestically it did okay considering the budget and, how it was talked about later during award season. It's just kind of interesting, that inverse. I guess that's what you get when you make a romantic drama with Pedro and Chris Evans and Dakota Johnson. Anyways, number 9 is Ballerina, making 2.1, adding to a domestic total of $55 million. For John Wick, that places it $37 million away from John Wick Chapter 2. For Len Wiseman, that makes it $3 million away from Total Recall 2012. Worldwide, it is sitting at $108 million. So for John Wick, it is $63 million away from outgrossing John Wick Chapter 2 at this point. And then for Len Wiseman, it's $5 million away from Underworld Evolution. So when it comes to the John Wick movies, it looks like it's kind of dead in place, but when it comes to Len Wiseman, they just need to get a couple more millions of dollars and they can squeak by some of these other titles. Still, I don't think that can cover up the fact that this, I think, was overall, safe to say, a financial disappointment. And then number 10 is Karate Kid Legends. Speaking of financial disappointments, I assume. I only say that because, like, compare this to Ballerina, at least you can point at the budget for this and say, like, well, they've doubled that budget, they made a little bit over it. Ballerina, it seems like they only crossed over the initial point, which isn't entirely great. But who knows? Sometimes Hollywood accounting, blah, 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 blah. That's just what we look at as a reference. But I feel like they definitely, I will maintain this, I feel like they were always expecting more than what they have gotten here. Still, though, it made $1 million, adding to a domestic total of $51 million. Worldwide, adds to a total of $102. So for domestic runs for the Karate Kid films, it ends $39 million away from the original film, and then worldwide, $13 million away from part 2. Kind of smack dab in the middle, as far as like the overall grosses. Which I feel like, especially if you look at 28 years later, that is something that has now come back to movie form and has blazed through the runs for the last 2, unadjusted for inflation, of course. And I feel like maybe they wanted that. I mean, you saw that with like the most recent Star Wars films as well. Like you see that with these franchise ones. Karate Kid, I feel like they wanted the same thing, but that is not what they got at the end of the day. Just something that got kind of close but ended somewhere in the middle. Now it's time for the fun part of the predictions for next week's top 5. Number 1, Jurassic World Rebirth. Easy, there's no other big budget movie that's going to compete with this one, and the Jurassic movies always do well. It'll be interesting after Dominion where we kind of are as an audience with the Jurassic ones. I feel like this will still make a lot of money to get to number 1. It'll be interesting to see if it can maintain that flair that the most recent films have had. Number 2, I think, will be F1. Number 3, How to Train Your Dragon. Number 4, Elio. And number 5, M3GAN 2.0. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.